Reboot It!
Hey everyone, I'm Ron Swallow, and welcome back to Reboot Rewind. This is the official after show for Reboot It, where we talk about what worked, what didn't, and what you guys thought of our biggest and best pitches. Today's episode features the entire Reboot crew. We got Ed Greer.
What's up?
We got Billy Business.
Hello, hello.
And of course, producer Bill.
Hello.
Wow.
Nice.
I didn't know we had Vidal Sassoon on the show.
There's no point in growing the quarantine mullet without being able to flaunt it on the show.
Oh, my goodness.
It is beautiful. I love it. It's perfect. So, as you guys know, this is our Reboot Rewind. It's not live stream this time. But as always, we're live in the chat for anyone watching the live premiere. And you guys, if you haven't joined us for the live premieres on YouTube, you're missing out on one of the coolest communities on the entire internet. Everybody comes together, gives their opinions, talks crap, says compliments, hugs each other through the internet. It's beautiful, and you should be there. And we appreciate all of you guys showing up with us. If you haven't done it, do it this for every release because you're going to enjoy it. So today, we're rewinding all the way back to season 1 of Reboot It to finally revisit our most watched, most upvoted episode of all time, Star Wars, The Skywalker Saga.
Woo!
Right? This is kind of a milestone for us, right, guys?
Yeah. It came at a time where it was like, Rise of Skywalker was just about to come out. Mandalorian had just blown it. Like Star Wars was, Jedi game, Jedi Fallen Order was just coming out. Like Star Wars was everywhere. And I remember it was Bill who I think was like, we should redo the entire Skywalker saga, not just like reboot Star Wars in a Mandalorian-esque way. It was like, no, let's take the Skywalker saga and just do it over. And I was nervous, but we did it.
Yeah, I mean, this more specifically, we had run the first season of Reboot It all the way up until Christmas of last year. And we had made plans because this was originally sort of a bonus episode. We were going to do the 6 major studios in Reboot It season 1, and this was episode 7. And we recorded this literally like a week and a half after The Rise of Skywalker came out. So we all came into this episode very fresh on what that entire 9-movie saga was, and even before Rise of Skywalker came out. So this had nothing to do with how that movie played out or what it was or whatever. I was just gung-ho on like, listen, we all know that Star Wars is cobbled together storytelling at its best. Retcons on top of retcons, on top of rewrites, on top of whatever. Let's try to go back in and make a streamlined version of this thing, because it just felt like one of the richest opportunities and also one of the most controversial. And I like courting controversy. So there's that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and it's, look, and we're going to also be a little bit honest. This is good SEO. We know you're all searching for Star Wars. We want you to come to our channel and check out what we're doing. And it's interesting because I think this is a great episode for that, because you got to see a little bitty heat going back and forth, but also you got to see some creativity out of that heat. And I think that was a really cool portion of this episode.
What's interesting too is I think if Rise of Skywalker had pleased everybody, I'm not giving my opinion of the film, but I'm saying if Rise of Skywalker was more like Force Awakens, where at the time, at least, everyone was like, this is awesome. But I think Rise of Skywalker was so divisive and so polarizing that it benefited us because people went on YouTube immediately, and you just type in Star Wars reboot, and our title, not even trying to be clickbait, was like how to redo the Skywalker saga. So I think we got an influx of people who were just not happy with Rise of Skywalker, which is like, all right, welcome, come on in, Yeah,
come join our club of goofiness. So how do you guys feel about looking back on it though? Like, do the heat and the stuff like that, does it bother you? Were you glad about it? How do you feel?
Well, I'll just say we talked a little bit off air, and it's like we have gotten into such larger fights since then that one pales in such comparison. It's like, hey, look at Rocky Marciano. Look at those powerful blows. He's hitting another meat sack. It's like, there's not really Tyson highlights. You know what I mean? And we have had the Twilight episode, the certain aspects of the Matrix, just things that episode. Where. Yeah, we've had some scorched earth on the
honestly,
show.
Twilight was like frustrating, but Matrix was probably like the most visceral, aggressive art. And I don't know. I think even that was cut down a little bit. But with Star Wars, I made the point that I was trying to make, and honestly, why I feel like that it quite literally is one moment. It's like 30 seconds of Ed and I kind of not even raising our voices.
I'm just saying we're if we had to keep, because like Homeboy is stuck on Sheev, I'll throw that motherfucker out the window. I would have Anakin be the Sheev person.
I'm not stuck on anything. What I don't like and what I think we're going to get crucified for is just keep shitting on how much you hate Star Wars. Like, it's got to be constructive. I am telling you, I am saying, I disagree.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
It does sound like you don't like Star Wars.
I like Darth Vader. Darth Vader is the person we love the most, and he's somebody's slave the whole time. And a bunch of stupid ass books wrote that he was mad about it. But in the movies, we just watch a slave until he throws him down the well. He's a slave forever, and he's so cool and does so much cool shit that I don't understand why that is the case.
But that's what I've been trying to say the whole time. Like, why are we not zeroing in on the let's rectify that, because that's interesting. It's just like my whole thing was, if we're doing Reboot It, our whole gimmick is being creative and redoing things. What I didn't want to ever become was four guys just being a review show. And in my opinion, and I know at the time, Ron, you felt the same way, and Bill and Ed didn't, was not even because I was defending Star Wars, but I felt like we just spent so much time talking about what we didn't like in Star Wars that my whole point was like throwing a flag on the play, just like, hey, let's spend more time being creative and making new stuff instead of opining everything that we hated about the other 9 movies. And that was the point I was trying to get across. And it's funny, if you go back and watch it, I'm saying that as a note. I'm not even saying it like to Ed as part of the episode, because I just assumed we were calling time, and I'm saying it as like a producer note, like thinking that we're just going to pick it back up, but it made its way into the episode. And honestly, like, that's the point where the reboot picks up and we all got on the same page. So it's like the big fight between us. It's like, I went back and watched it today. I was like, oh man, that's nothing.
Well, just for my part, I really think that just as Billy was just trying to say, hey, as a note, don't He-Man Star Wars, don't come in.
I did. I'm such a hypocrite. I did the exact same thing like 2 months later with He-Man, but that's okay.
Don't come in swinging your Johnson around about how this stack of Legos ain't sturdy, and that was something. But at the same time, the only thing I'll say in defense of myself and my rudeness, frankly, was it wasn't just I'm bitching about this list. Point by point, everything I said sucked, got excised from our draft to its benefit. And I just think I was a jerk about it, but it was just like I was surgically talking about the things that I thought we can't do anymore. And one of the main things was I just felt like we were about to go to Sheev Town. And I was like, I don't want to spend no more damn time in Sheev Town. And I think that the comment that set Billy off the most, Billy, I'm talking to you instead of the audience. I'm sorry. That was another thing. I kept being like, hey, homeboy's in Sheev Town. I wouldn't tell Billy that I felt he was in Sheev Town too long. So I'm sorry about that. But I was like, I thought that spending too much time there diluted the agency of Darth Vader, and then that blow up happened, and boom, we're right in there. We're finally saying what we really want to say. We were like characters in a movie who broke through the fakeness of dialogue, tossing at cross purposes, and got to an emotional core of, I don't want Darth Vader to be a slave to some douche named Why the Sheev story all over again when Vader's barely a character?
I mean, it's just interesting. It's like it shows too, like, our preferences for things, because it's like, to me, Palpatine is the most interesting character in Star Wars. Like, it's a character that I'm always thirsty to know more and more, because this is the guy who played the long con for a long time. And Darth Vader was a story that you were much more interested. And it took that moment where I was like, okay, this story, if we are kind of rooting it in Darth Vader, which is kind of where we got to that point, it's like, you're right. Let's even though I'm more interested in this part, for this story that we're telling together, let's put all our chips on the black helmet. Let's do Darth Vader, and that's why I think it ended up being as good as it was. But keep in mind, Ed and I have been friends for years, but this is the first time that we really creatively work together. So you're watching us figure each other out, like how to speak to each other really early.
Well,
Right.
and let's talk about this. Let me ask you guys this. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just wanted to add a behind the scenes bit to this. So I edited season 1 and season 2 of this show. And even to this day, I really miss the live at the table setup from an editing perspective. Because one of the things that I was very cognizant of as I was going through that episode is Billy just kept shooting Ed these weird looks. Billy just kept you could see all this stuff that they were just hashing out bubbling under the surface. Editing, I 100% just kept cutting to Billy as he would just shoot these silent looks at Ed, but you could totally read into this mother, you could see it in his eyes. So I feel
And what's crazy was those shots followed me into my actual job at Screen Junkies, because then I had fans tweeting that image as a meme for when I was disappointed in something for months afterwards. It was my profile picture, that face, that reaction shot definitely encapsulated. Yeah, it was probably that moment where, Ed's like, homeboy over here. I'm like, Billy, who is sitting 3 feet next to you.
Okay, well, this actually does lead into the question I was going to ask, which is, how do we find a balance between yes anding, but also being able to say, no, I disagree, while also moving on with the story? Because I think that was a big thing. Ed being able to say, it's stupid that Darth Vader's a slave. Him being able to say that sort of thing really did open up a bunch of stuff first. And you saying how upsetting it was that he felt like he was disrespecting what one of the things we loved, helped us move in the right direction. So what's the balance for us, guys? Especially with something we love, right? When you're in, if we ever decide to do a novelization thing where we turn a movie into we turn novels into movies, and we do that on the channel, and we have to do one of my books that I super love, I can tell you it would be very tough for me, and I would have to get through that somehow. And I think let's talk about that a little bit.
It's tough, and it's definitely kind of practicing what you preach, because it's Star Wars is very important to me. But I also have I have 9 movies of that story, and that's what it is. So I kind of feel a lot of times, and this is something that I've realized, honestly, this is kind of maybe what made season 3 a little tougher for me and not necessarily my favorite to make, was that when you come into things holding on to, it used to be don't come in with the pitch because then you're married to it. But sometimes even holding on to feelings, not even a fleshed idea, but a feeling is so toxic. And that's why by the time we get to Jurassic Park, where it's just I had a feeling for the first 5 minutes, and the minute I decided to drop it, not even are you sure you don't want to go this way, but drop it, that's when we started having fun again. And I feel with Star Wars, that was the tipping point where it was I had to tell myself, the story you want to tell is still rooted in the thing that you love. Drop it, come up with a new story together, because that's when it's fun, and that's when we really gelled. So I think that's something that I struggle with to this day. I think sometimes it's to our benefit. I think Zorro was one where I planted my flag, and who knows what we could have come up with if I wasn't Zorro has to be this. But those tend to honestly not be as fun. Even when I get my way, in a way, it's not as fun as just coming in and closing your eyes and jumping and seeing where the 3 of you are going to help me land,
One of the favorite pieces of advice I ever got from a network executive was a guy who said, anytime you run into a problem, whether it's in the story you're telling on screen or whether it's behind the scenes creatively, always run toward it, which means dramatically, when you run into something that just doesn't work, like you just can't make it work, unpacking why is often the most dramatically satisfying thing you can do. And I think that also is the case when we're doing this creatively behind the scenes. When we really run up against a point in our conversation where there is no solution because one person feels, I'm not even going to say that. When we do that, we have to figure out the because. And I think once we get into what about this is really making it an immovable problem, then we can find some way to go around it. And I think that you saw that happen in the Star Wars episode where Ed was just adamant about some specific ideas and Billy just was not feeling what he was saying. And once they got underneath idea versus idea to motivation versus motivation, then we could find some common ground. It's like, it's not just about, is the idea good? Is the idea bad? It's why is this idea important? And why am I having the reaction I am against it?
Yeah, and not to beat a dead wampa, but it just to me the real crux of all of both of our positions were it isn't about what is Star Wars to us, it is what can Star Wars be.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that I came in it straight from the get-go that, and maybe it is from just sort of a negative, like, why do all they do is drop down caves and kill animals? They go to asteroids, they go where they're not supposed to go, and they kill an animal. Then they go to an ice cave and they kill some ice spiders. Then they go kill a giant.
That Fallen Order game that came out is all just about killing animals. Like, you just go bother them and then kill them.
Dude, Star Wars characters are wanted by park rangers intergalactically. You know what I mean? So I'm just noticing things like these and things like the slavery. Like, you're gonna have a character that is a slave from the time he is born until the time he dies, and never ever gets to capitalize on his true potential. Why is that? Especially to give this other dude a story that we got to pick up 30 years hence. And why do we got to mitigate this guy's sacrifice? Why does this guy have to sacrifice? Maybe he's right. Maybe Mike makes right. I'm convincing myself with the dark side. The whole point is, why can't we actually have a character where we could, for a movie and a half at least, be like, this dude was used and abused, and now he's got his power, and now he runs stuff. That's cool. And we watch it get worse and worse. We can actually have a real visceral emotional reaction that is impossible keeping to the same story structure.
I don't disagree with you now. That day was different. But yeah, look, I love that. And I think this was, every one of us bumps up against this. At this point, I think all four of us have, but everyone has their episode where you have to learn you're too close to it and you got to let go. And mine was just happened to be pretty early on.
I hate that mine is Twilight. I'm so mad.
Yeah, what a weird hill to die on, dude.
I'm so mad at myself. I'm gonna be mad at
Lord
myself
of the Rings,
sure,
but Twilight,
I have stayed up nights going, Twilight, Ron? Really? Really?
Ron, you were just so starved for urban fantasy tropes that the minute we tackled any, you'd freak the F out.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're going to get a little personal here, and this is not this is about my insecurities. Like, I always feel like a lot of times the things I like, a lot of people look down on. And I know that none of you guys really look down on me. You wouldn't have me here if you didn't respect me and like me and think I was cool. But that doesn't matter sometimes in the moment. Sometimes in the moment, I'm thinking, these guys think I'm stupid. These guys don't respect, my ideas. And that's not true. But for a moment, I felt like that. And then my brain stopped doing the thing it normally does, which is like be open to ideas. And then it was like, which is stupid.
Well, but that's why we have other episodes of these rewinds where people have attacked us, and I do still try to treat them like a wounded wampa. Look, man, chill out, chillax. Maybe I don't have to kill you because I don't know what kind of thorns in your paw from whatever other thing, and I don't know what has made you identify so readily with this, frankly, the most hack fandom of all time. It's not my fault. That's not my fault that Star Wars is the most hack fandom of all time. That's not my fault.
It's not wrong. Unfortunately, it's not. Like it's got to the point where I have like 3 friends that I text Star Wars things about because I just can't talk about it online. It's impossible, and it sucks when something you love so much is like so toxic. And it's hard, a little bit hard for me to watch in this episode because you can see that I'm just cross my arms like, how dare you besmirch. But it's like, again, too, what also is like when you realize you're being ridiculous is like you're not even like you were proposing a new story and I took it as an insult to the other story. And that story is a story and not a person, and it doesn't need to be defended. So there we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are we gonna read our synopses? Because I think maybe now people are super ready for it. They're like,
hopefully, go to the bathroom before you start this.
This is a long one, you guys. This is a very long pitch. I'm going to warn you right now. I'm going to read all of it. So get
We're
ready.
doing a saga, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. So here's the pitch. This was a big one. Ed wanted to rewrite Vader. Bill wanted more than cartoonishly evil villains, and they both hated how the prequels undercut the mysterious history of the story. Meanwhile, Billy and I fought to preserve the themes and mythos of actual Star Wars. So here's where we ended up for what would most likely be a trilogy. Anakin Skywalker is the first person to access Force powers in centuries. Out of nowhere, he turns the tide of a generations-long galactic war, and that is the start of movie 1. Palpatine is deposed, and Skywalker, the great savior, assumes supreme power as Darth Vader to fix the galaxy, which almost immediately turns out to be worse than the war. Defectors from both sides cobble together a resistance. The whole story is really about building a third way in the aftermath of total war and then despotic rule. It ends with democracy being born, but the rebels may have to do some horrible things to get there. They literally steal Luke from his crib. They steal a baby. The plot is led by grizzled General Ben Kenobi and advised by the then hiding Palpatine family. The rebels believe their only hope to challenge Vader's power is his children. Leia is raised to be a leader in her father's empire. She trains to become Kylo Ren, second in command to Vader, but she cannot access her powers, which enrages and alienates her father. Meanwhile, the rebels train Luke to be a Jedi. In our story, the Jedi are a long-dead religious order whose purpose was basically to assassinate the Antichrist of the Force, whom they called the Sith. This was a prophecy no one ever thought would come true, but now Vader exists. It's essentially like if Jesus arrived with the power of Superman and took over Earth. The rebels are just as confused and hopeless as we would be in that situation. They're scouring texts from 2,000 years ago looking for some way to handle this. Kenobi, Master Yoda, and the Palpatines are the closest thing to Jedi experts, but their knowledge is incomplete, and they all have ulterior motives when it comes to teaching or controlling Luke. For his part, Luke can access only glimpses of his power, and with it, he experiences powerful calls to the dark side to essentially become a Sith, to use the power like an absolute ruler. Here, we fully embrace the dyad story elements from The Last Jedi. In the course of subterfuge and battle, Luke and Leia discover their powers kick in when they are near each other. Why? Leia learns first that she has a long-lost twin. No rebel ever told Luke his origin. Leia enlists an infiltrator, a double agent, to learn about her brother and plot his assassination. This infiltrator is Imperial pilot Han Solo. Feelings develop between them, but as Han goes deep cover, he gets turned to the cause of the resistance and defects. Leia has to make a choice between the man she loves and fealty to her father. This is the first crack in her devotion to the Empire. The first movie is the story of Leia being turned against the Empire. Meanwhile, Luke learns to his horror that Vader is his father, and he lashes out against the resistance for their manipulations. Reconciling the dyad to bring balance becomes the focus of the second movie, as the Palpatines sink their claws further into the lost Luke, hoping to use him to resurrect their empire. By the third movie, we have learned the Force is essentially a finite resource. It's an energy that Vader is now hoarding. The more powerful Vader becomes, the more nature breaks down across the galaxy, and the more it eats him from the inside out, slowly turning him into the cyborg monstrosity we know and love. Leia, Luke, and Resistance come to understand that killing Vader at the height of his power would inflict an irreparable wound to the galaxy, because the Force would die with him. They can only win by convincing him to willingly give up his power and release the Force back into nature. Meanwhile, with his children allied against him, Vader realizes the only way to protect his power and his empire is to kill them both. Luke and Leia win the day when they discover how to release Vader's power out into the galaxy, somehow using some MacGuffin, where it can disperse among the other people and never again be hoarded into cosmic ninja superpowers. It's a fitting metaphor for how power in any world should be spread fairly, not concentrated to lift up any special individuals. Whew, okay, that was it. Now let's get to the cast real quick.
Do you know what's crazy? By the way, I was looking at this while you were talking. The Star Wars episode, which was everything you just heard, we packed that in, is 45 seconds longer than our Knight Rider episode. Like, that is insane that we got that much plot in 90-minute jam session, and it rocks. Like,
Dude,
it is an
so
awesome pitch. Like, it
so
sounds so badass. I forgot how great it is.
Yeah, it's amazing. Cast, we got Luke in the Star Wars tradition, a young unknown actor. Leia, also a young unknown, or Florence Pugh. Did I say that name right? I always mess up names.
Yeah.
Han Solo, Penn Badgley. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Viggo Mortensen, or Denzel Washington. The conniving son of Palpatine, who becomes a suspicious part of the Resistance, Joaquin Phoenix. We want to put together a director's room who can all take a movie in the trilogy, including Ryan Coogler and Bong Joon-ho. So we felt pretty great about it at the time. But does it still hold up, guys? Did we miss anything? Would you do anything differently now? Now let's have 4-hour conversation about how we would fix our reboot.
No, okay, I just want to go first real quick in regards to the way we worked in that Kylo Ren as a title and not a person was super. It was just fresh. The acquiescence finally to me having Vader be king of everything, king fascist of everything, was awesome. Not just, it just was, because it opened us up to having somebody that can really fight for 3 movies, not skulking in the dark. Like, no, we have ships upon ships. We have coalitions. And when we go to try to fight him, he beats us by himself and then has stormtroopers mop us up. We have no hope. We are stretched to our limits. What could we do? Steal his son and hope that that thing has the power to do what we need it to do.
Yeah. Also,
that's great.
Yeah, it was great. Also, it was. It's also easier to see him going to the dark side that way, right? Like becoming absolutely the most powerful person in the galaxy. It's easy to see someone letting that go to their head and becoming what they don't want to become.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, we improved his start as a hero. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but in the previous things, they have him be a hero by accident, by kid insouciance. No, this guy is like the LeBron James of the Force. Yep. He was built up to be a big thing, and he exceeded all of it. And for a glimmer of time, he's the perfect hero. He defeated something very evil. But, you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. The only cool thing Nolan put in somebody's head. That's a beautiful thing. He does live long enough to see himself not only become a villain, but become somebody who transcends his villainy in a way that I think is deeper and truer to a certain theme that I think the present text has.
Listen, kind of piggybacking on that, I think everything that we did with the Force in this movie is kind of brilliant. The idea, I forget who even came up with this, but just
Billy said it was going to be a finite thing, and that really,
that idea is brilliant. The idea that Vader is the only one with Force powers. I know this goes against everything Ron loves about having a magical universe, but the idea that the Force is something that is essentially equivalent to like our Jesus myth, like. You can't really believe in it in modern day as all this other horrible stuff is going on. And then to have it suddenly matter in the form of this one guy, to me, like that streamlines this whole story in a way that makes it so much more immediate and chaotic and dangerous. Like, it's not that there's all kinds of mystical ninjas who all do their own thing and you could hopefully get an alliance together. It's like, no, this dude is it. Like, all of us normal people have to fight him, and we can't. There's no way to do it. I just love that. It's
the audacity that they would sneak in espionage style and steal this baby. It also, what I love too, and this is something that the original movies try to do, and it doesn't quite go like retroactively with something like a Rogue One, but it's like it makes the rebels not the shiny, squeaky good guys. Like that's a really horrible thing to do. And it's like, I love that it's like, Obi-Wan not telling Luke that Vader's his dad in those movies, it's kind of like brushed off a little bit, but this, like, I would be furious if it's like, you stole me, you stole my life away from me, and I could have been a prince, I could have been, that could have been me, and now I'm stuck here on the Nebuchadnezzar eating snot oatmeal with you guys. Like, I would be furious, I love that. I love that.
And you get this, I would say, as an audience member, if I'm watching that, you get this intense feeling the whole time, knowing that every word that the Resistance talks to Luke is them lying to him and lying to themselves.
Yeah, it's the tension, because you never know when someone's going to blow it, and he's going to find out that he is actually not supposed to be there. Like, oh, that's great. Like, honestly, again, it's like letting go of everything that came before and just blank slating. Like, this is a great just story. Like, not even Star Wars. Like, this is just an awesome story. We could call it something else and probably sell this today.
Dude, to yes and that, I highlighted a couple of things. The scenes where we could have from movies 1 to towards the end of 2, where the Luke Skywalker character and Leia meet each other at different battlefields and stuff, and we do the whole Kylo Daisy Ridley thing. But the whole point of it is, when they can do, I maintain Leia can do a little bit of Force stuff, or else her dad wouldn't be interested in her at all. Yeah. But it ain't nothing. It ain't nothing for the scion of such a powerful Force user. He's so disappointed in it, and we kind of established that. I'm just saying, as Luke gets powerful, he's siphoning off more and more of her juice. So it's like making her look worse and worse to her dad. And when they have these battles from movies 1 to like the end of 2, perhaps, or maybe even the middle of 3, them getting together and being able to end the fight against each other, their abilities multiply so much that it's just dangerous for people to be around when they're fighting, because it's like a crazy nuclear bomb. That whole aspect, we could coast on that for a minute, dog.
I mean, great scenes. I don't know where we said this was a trilogy. This feels like 6 to 9 movies worth of stuff,
Okay, here's another thing I noted. If we're doing that from movies 1 to about the end of 3, the thing is, Homegirl, Leia and Han Solo have had their time to fall in love over the course of 2.5 movies. Perhaps at the end, like I think we said in the episode, at the end, she's had a baby, and the baby to the rebels is this new proof that there could be a new way and all this kind of stuff. But Anakin, as we stated, steals the baby, which sets up a whole nother trilogy of dedicated parents we've come to love over 3 movies, trying to get their kid back and trying to ensure that the super dyad dynamo, whatever this kid could be, maybe that whole thing. That's great stuff.
Yeah, that wasn't even in the synopsis, but we also, I mean, in terms of how much we packed into this episode, we had a fairly long conversation about some sort of post-credit scene or a jumping off point into a new trilogy that involves Leia having that baby, Vader stealing that baby, and Vader committing to this baby is now going to be the Kylo Ren, which gives you shades of the, obviously the sequel trilogy coming into what we're doing here.
Oh, and one last to completion on us, the concept of watch another episode. We do ourselves to completion. There are so many things in here, like him losing his body to hoarding the Force. His body is becoming worse because he's holding too much Force. Again, Billy's brilliant idea of it being a finite resource. If it's a finite resource, how about having all of the roaring seas of the universe inside you? How about having every comet shower in the universe inside you? How would it rot you? And him doing stuff maybe as a big thing at the end of the second movie, The Empire Strikes Back. Our heroes are about to win, and their Star Destroyer is yanked out of the sky in a tremendous force act by the daddy, but it blows his arms off or caves his chest in too, and he needs all this help because he's screwing up his body trying to stop them. There's so much there, man.
By the way,
So
the
much.
finite force thing is definitely a ripoff of Spawn. I don't know where that came from, but that's 100%.
Yes, I love
That's
that.
had to have been where that came from.
You're gonna have to get me some royalties there, bub.
Oh God! Imagine Peters and McFarlane together. That would be a match.
I retire from the industry.
All right.
Wow.
Well, let's get into some fan comments. That's why we're here. Well, at least part of the reason we're here. So let's see. We were shocked about how positive your comments were, by the way. Both responding to our ideas and seeing how messy arguments are part of the process. We appreciated that stuff. So comments like this first one here from Teddy, Feica. Fiesa?
FICA?
FICA? The FICA score. The Teddy FICA. This episode damn near broke up the band. The look in Billy's eye at the Vader doesn't need to be their father. Bro.
I would say, Teddy, if you're still a fan, I hope you are. That didn't even come close. I watched The Matrix. That was the one where I almost walked out on this whole damn experiment for good. But yeah, I definitely there's we at that time, because we were filming in person, we each had our own dedicated camera. So there's got to be 2 hours of footage of me just just looking, staring daggers. You could probably do one of those Yule log kind of loops and just put it on your TV of me just
Yeah, I bet editing this has got to be a lot easier than editing the 2.5 hours of footage from each single person. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I will also say to that comment, as the person who threw out there in the middle of the episode, I don't even know if Vader needs to be their father. That was the level at which I was on board with what Ed was going for, which is let's just throw out everything. And I'm glad that we didn't go that route, because I think reworking the father-twin relationship just gave us gold. So,
yeah.
We were pushing too far. Billy had a totally valid reaction to saying, what is this guy talking about? And then we reeled it back. And that's part of the process too.
It's the first time we really, again, everything I feel like now just revolves around Twilight. Everything revolves around it. But that was the first time where, the difference between a reboot and a reimagining and a remake and a completely different thing altogether is the finest line. It's so small. And this was the first episode where we really kind of bumped right up against it, and I kind of think this one turned out fine, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But this one, when you find that sweet spot where you don't cross the line but you get as close as humanly possible, again, this is one of our really our most creative pitches. Even just hearing you do the whole thing all over again, I was like, God, I forgot how compelling this is.
Oh, and I just want to say one thing. I liken it to how people will come in, some old couple will have a mid-century modern house or some A-frame house in Connecticut for 100 damn years. They get old. They want to move into the city with their kids. Some young couple moves in. They're just like, this wall is dumb. The wall that had Nana's pictures on it for 70 years
Totally.
and cookie recipes just smashed to bits. And these young yuppies, they don't give a damn about that dumb old wall. They don't give a damn. They're going to knock out the back wall and put a pool there. Yeah, it's in Connecticut. It's 25 below. So what? Pool. Screw you guys. And it's not your house anymore, right? It's not our house, but it damn sure ain't your house. So it's one of these things where these properties are one of the things that we've run into. And it's funny that you say it's shorter or almost as short as the Knight Rider episode, because on that episode, you were doing what you said I was doing. And again, this is the second tease for the Knight Rider episode, but that we're gonna do. But you know what? It was I was like, dude, I refuse to have you acknowledge that their four walls are great. The four walls are great, and we don't have to redo the roof. I'm okay to smash walls from here to there to make the kitchen more open, to let us walk on one feng shui out onto the veranda. That's fine. You want to stain the deck? Let's stain the hell out of it. Let's make it a dark, deep wood. Let's get nuts. But I was I felt like you were the walls suck. This should be a stadium instead of a home. You know what I mean? And I was just so balking at it. And I think you felt I was doing that with Star Wars, when in reality, I was going, get the leaves out of the pool, for Christ's sake. Look at all the leaves in the pool. This is toxic. And
Well,
that's what I was
think
talking about
this.
with the slavery and
Sometimes
stuff.
you're in Connecticut and you build that pool and you add some heat to it, and you also add a hot tub and then some cool lights with a covering, and now you have a kick-ass backyard where you hang out with your friends, and you guys probably drink some alcohol, and I will drink soda.
R.I.P.
I
this
really-
allegory.
Can I just say, I really don't want to do the Knight Rider rewind now. Like, I feel like there's just nothing good as that hour. But
No,
I digress.
but you're right though. The whole thing is when you are too covetous of your thing, but the too covetous line, like you said, the line is so. That's why this is a fun thought experiment, though. The line is so hard. It's a tripwire in the jungle at 4 a.m. when you wake up to go take a piss. That's how fine that line is between you totally blew up my property to you knocked out a wall and this is so much more open. It's such a fine line across the fandom.
You know, I think I said it on the AMA episode that we did, but like the big underlying question to everything that we do here is like we have to pick a lane of, is this going to be a faithful remake, a reimagining, a sequel, a prequel, a requel? There's different ways to reboot. And I think maybe with one or two exceptions, we have never picked the wrong lane. This episode was just so the right lane. It just clicked so well.
There's not as many lightsaber fights as I would have liked, but they're still going to be in there. So, you know.
It's funny. They come a little bit throughout the first trilogy, but the second trilogy ends on probably the biggest, best extravaganza of force power that anybody will ever see. The third movie is the third movie of the second trilogy is a lightsaber fest that no one's ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't want to drag us on too long of a digression, but I do think, Ron, this is a great example of how less magic often makes a more compelling story. Because I think in a world where everybody has magic, magic basically becomes your cell phone. In a world where nobody has magic, magic becomes an A-bomb. You know what I mean? And so I think that this is a great example of how in the original Star Wars stories, magic is pretty suffused, even if they pay lip service to it being rare. We have yet to really be told a story from that universe where somebody doesn't have some magic, including the Mandalorian, whose most popular character is Baby Yoda. In a world where that magic is concentrated to like one or two major actors, the magic means so much more.
Well, actually, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because while like Jim Butcher is and the Dresden Files is one of my favorite things, which technically we could do a reboot of if we wanted at some point, because they did do one season of the Dresden Files, and maybe I'll get you guys to do that in season 10. But he is the only one, for the most part, who has magic in the world he's in, and he's helping out, at least for the first couple of books, he's helping out other people who don't have magic, who are just victims of other people who are more powerful than him even. And so like really the magic is rare and threatens regular people. Eventually it turns into this whole world where there's tons of magic everywhere, but that's as he gets more involved in this specific world that has to hide from a world of mostly not magic people, because actually the not magic people will end up being more dangerous because there's 500 million times more.
Yeah, and if you can build stakes into the magic, which we did here with sort of the limited force resource, that kicks it up even another notch. And I don't know, just sort of some interesting storytelling mechanics that are worth thinking about.
Yeah, it's the cool stuff that can happen, but
Well, but having Luke, but I don't agree with that. I agree. I vehemently disagree with that in a nice, humble way. I disagree with that because in this world, I'm sorry, Wedge Antilles matters in this world because Luke is over there and he's preoccupied getting his butt whooped by a girl and her dad. He's barely a stopgap between this lady and her dad for 2.5, 3 movies. You know what I mean? Wedge Antilles and all these guys, they have to complete their mission. We can really concentrate on how a group of people who just barely got this weapon are barely in this war. I just think that ratchets it up and
But
it makes
there's
Luke
still
so
not
important.
as many cool sword fights. That's what I'm saying. Like, look, I understand where you guys are coming from. I'm just being clear. I totally understand where you're coming from. This story is better. I 100% agree. There also isn't as many cool fight scenes. There just isn't, because you don't have a bunch of people with lightsabers fighting each other, because you can't do that. It would fuck up the story.
But that's where it goes back to, but we already have those movies.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I enjoy those things. I enjoy great fight scenes. Those are my favorite things. But of course, you can also do that in regular life too. I mean, my favorite Jackie Chan is probably some of my favorite movies, fight scenes of all time, and he's just a dude.
I would argue that in our original trilogy, as seen by me, I think there's approximately 1.75 to 2.8 times more lightsaber fights in the first trilogy, due to the fact that we have two teenage, at least, or 20-year-old Force users that have lightsabers, one of which is trained, and the other one is also trained. That never happens in the original trilogy. There's an old man who beats the hell out of his kid.
That is true.
I think there's opportunity for more lightsaber fights. There are just less lightsabers. That's the
yes. So yeah, we just concentrated the cocaine.
I'm cool with that.
Are we still on the first question?
Yeah.
Rapid fire.
So now let's go on to this one. Even though I would say that we've answered this a little bit, but I think it's fine to reiterate that. I love how Ed and Billy clashing made the good ideas emerge. Creativity is more than just smiling while thinking of something new. That's from Elizabeth Brandsetter.
You can only get to those good places if you're willing to have moments that are uncomfortable and break through, but also like that's because like I respect Ed, even though I don't agree all the time. We kind of rarely agree when you really think about it, but we respect each other so much because I know Ed is one of the smartest people that I know. That's how you break through. You respect the other person, and then eventually you will find a common ground. It just seems like a lot of times now people can't get even to the respect level, so we don't even try.
Right, and I'd rather have an interesting disagreement than a boring agreement.
Totally.
That's where I come from.
Put that on a Stitcher.
and last things last, and we have covered this question, so after this, we'd probably move on to the next question. But I couldn't just say I hate Vader being so puppet-like. That was the whole thing. I was sitting staring daggers at you the whole time when you kept going to Sheevetown, because I was like, I couldn't articulate at the moment that this is what's wrong with the story for real. If there's one thing that was wrong with it from the get-go, is this guy never really got his due. The saga is literally about him, and he never got to be King Crap ever. And in our movie, he gets to be King Crap, and it goes downhill immediately. You know what I mean? So I couldn't find a way to say that, and I think I just had a while to get to. It is because he has no agency. The most powerful man in the universe, the most interesting man in that universe, having no agency. No, just stop the wall of bullets, Neo. No, I just hated it, and I couldn't find a way to say it until we had that tete-a-tete.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
So we got from Matt Lafferty. I know it's silly to ascribe this much to just a bunch of nerds talking Star Wars, but this episode is a surprisingly hopeful look at how Discord can and at times should work. My own 2 cents, the Emperor, Empire, Sith's desire is not for the war to ever end. As long as war exists, fear, hate, and suffering remain high, giving more power to the dark side. So why would they want it to end?
Can I just address the last part of that? First of all, thank you for appreciating, our warts and all discussion. I kind of hate that, and that was like the second part of what that guy just said. That was what I was really trying to take out of this completely. That sort of evil for evil's sake. Why do they want there to be war? Because war empowers the dark side. Why is that good for them? Because they use the dark side. So what do they use the dark side for? To make war. It's like just such a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
And I could not be more happy that we got rid of that completely. That we are now in a world where war is about geopolitics, and then once, the war between two empires ends, it's about this guy who thinks because He literally is like the Messiah in this world. He thinks it is his responsibility and his right to fix everything, and that goes downhill, and you have to stop that person because he's high on his own supply. And there was never, and that's not even particularly nuanced, but there was never that much nuance in Star Wars. And I'm glad that we could even bring that much to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and just very, very succinctly, it also worships power in a way. To spiritualize power in the way that the original trilogy and a lot of the other products do, it spiritualizes power. It's like a holy gun. That's what force powers are throughout Star Wars a lot of time. A holy gun. You got to learn how to concentrate real hard, and then your hand, when you touch this gun, it'll work. I mean, levitating rocks, they do it obviously in a more pacifistic way, but that's kind of what you're doing. It's mythologizing power. In ours, we do see the force as a gun. And just like a gun, it can be used for bad or ill, but it must be marshaled. And we evolve it past it being a gun into being actual power of self-actualization and freedom. And in the end, we graduated from being a gun wielded by jerks and inbred freakos into a thing that's egalitarianly spread across the multiverse, the universe. And I just, that blew me away. And Bill's communist penchant really came in handy there, because I love the spread the wealth aspect we got to with the Force thing. And with Billy saying it's a finite resource, it was a natural place to go. And with us modifying how we see power, I do believe we came up with a more interesting story than, oh, good thing these good guys got the power. That's the most simplistic myth I've ever heard in my life. Good thing these good guys got the power. We are safe. That's stupid. How about you disseminate the power so that we can all feel equally safe? That could be really cool.
Yeah. Then Jacob Blond said to me, and I think this actually kind of goes in with this, even though it's mostly given me it. I said, I wonder how long it will be before Ron mentions Grey Jedi.
And it's in the sarcasm font. You got to notice this
Grey
is
Jedi.
And let me say this. The reason you are wondering that is because I've always mentioned Grey Jedi. And the reason I've always mentioned Grey Jedi is because it never made sense to me that being passionate or upset about things that are bad and then taking action upon those things with that same passion would make me a bad person. And so in the realm of Star Wars, it always made sense to me that there had to be some kind of middle ground where being passionate doesn't make you evil. It's just interesting that you being angry while having the power of the Force immediately makes you go bad. It turns your eyes red. You get little slit pupils, and then you start stabbing children. You know what I mean? Like when you say all that stuff, to me, there's like a part that doesn't make sense to me. So that's literally why Great Jedi always made sense to me.
Here, let me just say this, and I don't want to turn this into a Star Wars TED Talk. I will say that I think with the Jedis and how it originally is in those movies, or how it's supposed to be, is compassion approved. Passion leads to attachment. And look, if you want any sort of like, well, what exactly does that mean? Watch me for the first half hour of this video. It is passion leads to irrationality. It leads to holding on to things instead of going with the flow. Compassion is different. And I say what you want about Attack of the Clones. There's a lot to say about it. But I love that line that Anakin says is like, in a way, Jedi are encouraged to love. They are. It's maybe not shown so well in those movies, and they are trying to make the point that the Jedi were wrong about things. But I do think a criticism of the Force that we address in ours that I actually really like is that, you know, in all the original Star Wars movies, you hear that the Force is what bonds all living things together, that it does kind of seem unfair that only, you know, a third of the population gets to feel it and manipulate it and use it when 100% of the population is clearly contributing to it. It's a very strange kind of notion. And it's one that I think Star Wars is not designed for you to truly think about. And like, they tried to give it a very textbook biological reason why. And I feel like It was kind of just doubling down on this idea that it's like, okay, sure. And there's definitely criticisms, but I do love with ours that it's like, yeah, you put it as a finite thing, and then it becomes this. It becomes like a fight about resources, which what it should have been in the original movies, honestly.
Mhm.
But in terms of like the whole gray Jedi thing, I think it's more just like they're always like, we must bring balance to the Force. And that's another thing about the original trilogy that makes no sense. It's like, well, bringing balance to the Force just means the dark goes away. And I think, if anything, Pixar with Inside Out showed us that sometimes it's okay to be sad. So I don't think that the gray Jedi is a thing that works necessarily. Sorry, let me rephrase. I don't think that the balance of the Force is something that really works in those movies, and I think the Gray Jedi was kind of like this fan thing literature thing to kind of make it work, whereas our version kind of skirts around it and doesn't even try to bother with this balancing. It's such a weird turn of phrase that they really hinged a lot of Star Wars on, which is balance of the Force, balance, when clearly that's not the mission in those movies. It's to eradicate half of it.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the masterstroke in what we did is balance literally becomes concentrating it in one place. If you stop concentrating the Force in one place and you actually have it evenly spread amongst everybody, that is balance. The thing that I think makes, a Pulp Fiction audience uncomfortable is that also means that you get rid of your special crazy ninja powers for your special people, which is what Ed was just talking about. But I think we are past that as a society, trying to believe the myth that that's a good thing. That when the special good people have the special crazy powers to do things nobody else can do, that's good. And it's only when the bad special people have that power that's bad. I think we're at a point where we should start looking at it differently. Like, just concentrating power in general is a bad thing. And balance and harmony equals equanimity, equals it is spread evenly to everybody.
Yeah, just one quick thing. Also, if you think about it, maybe this isn't proven in human history. This is why I'm about to say it. Power is inherently apolitical. Power just exists. It's like energy. And then it's attracted. They'll probably do, some physicists in the year 3000 will prove that power is attracted to personalities who are awful or super virtuous on their way to being awful. They'll prove that power just sucks to them like a sponge. They'll prove that some way. And I'm just thinking, in our world, it isn't so much abject evil or like stormtroopers. Where do stormtroopers come from in our world? In the present, they're conscripted slaves, they're clones, they're all types of crap. In ours, they're the remnants of basically a religious holy war that they won. These guys followed a zealot waving a laser sword for the first time in 1,000 years, and his beautiful powers won the day and stomped out evil in the galaxy. So the average stormtrooper will whoop your ass. These dudes ain't missing. These dudes ain't missing for nothing. They're zealot soldiers, and they're ready for Freddy. That is a market improvement. And who are our rebels? Oh, they're not a butcher. They are ragtag, but they're the rats that survived. They're the other side's dregs. They're frankly Germany around around 1919.
Yep,
That, 1925, something like that. That's who these people are. And you can root for them up to an extent, but you know who they were before, where they come from, and their inherent misdeeds for the greater good are heinous. So I think we mentioned it in the episode. We actually have a war. A war is two sides. Sometimes when you look through each side, equally heinous sides a lot of times. That's what a real war is. That's what a real match is. It isn't a cat chasing a mouse. It's the inevitable tides of war. Look,
I'm going to have
to great
here. It's just 25 dudes with lightsabers hitting each other. That's all it is.
I was just going to say, after Ed's impassioned rant, cue the commenters who are going to show up and say, what you guys are talking about sounds really good, but it's not Star Wars.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Go ahead, Ron.
So next comment, because just like that episode, we're getting long. No, that episode actually wasn't that long. DJ Warrior, he says, I love the new dynamic of Leia and Han. It reminds me of Will Turner and Elizabeth from Pirates movies. Like he was meant to be her designated friend/servant, but nothing more. And when she sends Han to spy on the rebels, I found a way to rework one of the worst lines from the prequels. When he comes back from his mission, it goes something like this. Leia, is there anything else to report? Han, you don't want to know. Leia, I told you to report everything. That's an order. Han, all right, princess. What do you think we do with prisoners? Leia, detain, interrogate, imprison after a trial. Han shows a scar explaining he had to take the fall for the rebels to gain their trust and was sent through due process. Han, Leia, we torture them. And not just the men, but the women and the children too. They never even asked me a question. End scene. It's mainly just to make the Anakin line more dramatic and meaningful.
And it's the Anakin line mixed with Han Solo's line after in Empire Strikes Back. I think that's a really cool scene. I love that. That's a great suggestion.
The fact that we have fanfic is awesome.
Dude, I love when people do that in the comments. No big treatise to give you, but just do more of that. Like add on to what we do. I hate when people jump into the comments to be like, here's my pitch, and it has nothing to do with what we just talked about, and in many ways is often objectively worse, or at least safer. I love when people come in and want to add on top of what we did. Like that's manna from heaven for me.
Yeah, that's
because it pounds home the point. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but it takes more, whatever you want to call it, cojones, mental acuity, mental gymnastics, mental ability to yes and all the way than to no but. It takes so much more mental ability, and that's one of the key virtues of the show.
Yeah, you should have thought about that when you watched Star Wars, Ed. Sorry, guys.
I literally was part of the best thing that I've ever seen in regards to improving it. So I feel great about my position.
Yes, I know. Coming up, we got Lack of Response. That's the name of this dude or lady. I like the insight that the Skywalker Saga is really the multiple rises and falls of Palpatine.
It's kind of everything Ed's been talking about, right? Is like ostensibly this is the Skywalker Saga, but really the person driving all the action through 9 movies is Palpatine and his weird behind-the-scenes machinations. So we definitely. I think we left room for some of that, but it doesn't become so central to our story.
Yeah,
I like how we made it generational. I think Joaquin Phoenix is like the son of the Sheev that might die at the end of the first movie, and it's just it doesn't die. It doesn't have to be cloned. People, regular breeding can keep certain enmities going, just like in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we got To Explain Later. I love this one. That's another person's name is To Explain Later. I just realized John Peter tells them, I don't want to hear any more crap about this being hard, or I'll give you a crappier office. Start a reboot at season 2. They're all working from home.
John Peters started the pandemic.
I think
it's just his sort of addition. All right, regular life, but you have to do it at home. You suck. Your ideas suck.
What can you remind me? Because I haven't had a chance to really rewatch this episode. What was the John Peters thing that we had to put in this one?
It was Kylo Ren.
Okay.
His whole thing was, Adam Driver was the most beloved part of the sequel trilogy, and everybody loves Kylo Ren, so he better be in this series. And that's actually where we got the idea that Leia is training to become Kylo Ren, and that's sort of the title of Darth Vader's second in command.
That's such a great, sometimes the John Peters, it's annoying, and we do our best to kind of skirt it out of the way, but that's one of the best uses of a John Peters is where you completely reimagine it. And I love that Kylo Ren, I think we said this earlier in the episode, but I really love the idea because it is kind of strange in the sequel trilogy that he's, Kylo Ren is the master of the Knights of Ren. We're like, who? And then and Rise of Skywalker is just 4 guys in KKK sheets that don't do anything for the whole movie. They don't help anybody. But I love that that's kind of another term for consigliere in this world. And that mask then actually becomes way cooler because it's that is the crest of the family. It's all very like when I hear our pitch for this, it almost feels more Game of Thrones to me than it does Star Wars. It's like, I know we just joked on the other Rebooted about He-Man, where it's like taking two things that are popular and just saying it's this meets this, but this really does to me feel like Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, especially too when we're talking about Palpatine, and it's like we don't have to clone his body, and it's not dark energy that keeps him going for years and years. It's a dynasty, it's a family, and that to me kind of like scratches that itch of Game of Thrones being gone, but also of Star Wars. Set it in space instead of, like, I think Game of Thrones is also a great kind of compass of like keeping it feeling real, but also throwing in mystical elements to it. Like, it's a great pitch. It's a great episode.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't mention that I hated reading the Game of Thrones book because there was no goddamn magic in it. I was just like, why am I reading this fantasy book with no magic? I could read about people fighting each other with swords and political intrigue somewhere else. Where's the dragons and the magic?
Well, and I would argue that one of the main things that the best fantasy novels do is either, I mean, the only ones that I've read that I like that I probably couldn't quote right now, they just kind of introduce the magic. The magic is a seismic shift in the world, at least of the protagonist, at the very least. In this, we've posited that magic shifts the balance of the entire universe. And we see how magic, creates space Hitler, for lack of a better word. I just think that's so much more powerful than some of these guys. They use it kind of bad. And then there's these other guys, they use it, these other guys. But then we got some guys, the other guys. It's so
really
much more succinct.
for you, Ed. It's really perfect.
I mean, Star Wars, when you really think about
magic,
when you really think about Star Wars, it is kind of crazy. Like, as much as I love Star Wars, it's two completely different stories. It is Empire versus a band of rebels. That's one story. And then Jedi versus Sith is almost a completely different movie. It's kind of nuts that somehow it's all tangled and tied together. But like, even the fact that, like, in the first movie, people are like, don't BS us with your old sorcerer's ways, you old weirdo. Like, it feels so out of place in this like political cat and mouse game that I do like again, like, I love Star Wars. I'm never going to say that, like, and I don't want the Star Wars that I have, but like, I would love to have this in addition to it. I would love to have this as, once I watch the old ones, throw this one on, and do, a 2-week binge marathon. Why not?
Yeah, it's I just want to end. Well, we're going to end here, and I want you guys to give some ending comments, maybe something just like, do you still feel good? And then all that good stuff. What, you know how we do it. But I just want to say that, like, while I joke about a lack of magic in things and stuff like that, this is fun too. I want to point that out. Like, sure, we tell a great story, and it is a fantastic story, but it's also fun. There's a lot of fun adventures that are going to happen during this whole thing. And so I think the other thing that we pulled off doing was adding more gravitas to an adventure story. And I don't know if you can go wrong with doing something like that. So personally, I'm very proud of us for pulling it off and not stabbing each other in the faces.
What more needs to be said? Nothing to add.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that does it for Reboot and Rewind. On behalf of myself, Ed Greer, producer Bill, and Billy Business, we want to thank you guys for watching and being part of this community. You guys showing up and chatting with us and sending us messages and finding us on other places is wonderful, and we love it. So thank you for hanging out with us one more time, and we'll see you next time.